Hello, welcome to This Side of the Ceiling. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Jill. And we're two good friends trying to live this life on this side of the ceiling as abundantly as Christ has called us to.
We are by no means experts, but we love to study His Word and share everything that He has revealed and taught us.
So come along with us as we open up the scriptures and dive into His wonderful Word.
Today we find ourselves in between studies. We have finished our study of Peter, which was fascinating. We love studying his life and the way it was transformed because he was with Jesus. It opened our eyes to ways for us to be transformed and to grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus because we followed Peter's journey and Peter told us to do that. Next time on this podcast, we're going to start another study. However, today we wanted to pause a little and discuss something that's near and dear to us. You know, we are both very proud mothers of grown children. So today we're going to reflect about some of the experience we've had as mothers. We certainly aren't done mothering and we're sure not experts in parenting, but God has blessed us with a wonderful long-term friendship between you and me. And we've been allowing God to guide us as we share in the village of watching each other's children grow into wonderful adults. And we've been helping each other along the way.
You and I think mostly our relation started when we bonded over parenting young children.
Yes.
And we have been there in that season of life where we parented young children. You are an elementary teacher, junior high teacher. I teach college age students. And now we find ourselves in a season of our children are grown. We're in empty nest. My children are all of our children are in their early 20s. And so we're looking back and we don't have as many of maybe the blind spots that you have when you're in the middle of it all.
Right.
So, and you look back with some regrets. I could have done this better. And then some things, this was good.
And lots of lessons that you've learned.
Yes. And I feel like that's where we can be helpful. That's where you can want to encourage parents and moms that are in the middle of it. And I felt like an aha moment yesterday. At church, we were talking about John the Baptist, and our pastor preacher was in John 3 in Luke 3 talking about John preparing the way for the Lord. And he read this passage in Luke 3 that says, John was fulfilling what the words of Isaiah the prophet said, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. Every valley shall be filled, every mountain and hill shall be made low. The crooked shall become straight, and the rough places shall become level ways. And all flesh shall see the salvation of God. The weird thought that came to me was because we were talking about how John the Baptist was trying to smooth out the way and level the way so that people could see Jesus clearly. And what hit me is how we in our generation have been accused of being the helicopter parents. But now I think they're being, what do they call them? The lawnmower parents that are just blazing the trail so that it is smooth.
Right.
And I thought that's what they were talking about with John the Baptist. That was his job. His job was to clear out the obstacles so that people could see Jesus clearer. And it hit me. That is our job as parents. We are supposed to make the way smoother, but not for the reason that we're accused of. Not so that our kids can get on the team or make the grade or excel or get in the club or the college or the group.
Or not struggle.
Yeah. But we're supposed to be making that path straight so that they see the Lord clearer. And I think we have too many times made idols of our children. I know I've been guilty of that at times, where my world is obsessed by my children. And if they're looking good, I look good. And that's so easy to do as a parent because you can have blind spots about your kids. We all do. And it's not necessarily bad. We need to see other people that way because we're very quick to forgive our sins. Oh, they didn't mean to do that. Or to see the intent or the potential in our children. But I thought it was so interesting in this passage, in the same way that John clearly knew his purpose. His purpose was to prepare the way for people to see Jesus clearer. And he even goes on to say, I must become less and he must become great. And I think that is our role as parents. We are to prepare the way for our children so that they see Jesus clearer. And we're supposed to work ourselves out of a job. We're supposed to become less and less important in their life as Jesus becomes more and more. But there are obstacles. We're going to see obstacles. It's not, we need to see selfishness and pride in our children and think, how can we remove that? How can we help them? Because if they live with selfishness, they're not going to see God. If they live with pride, they're not going to see God clearer. So we have work to do. We have valleys to fill in. We have mountains to see. And too many times we get discouraged when we see those obstacles. Oh no, I see this obstacle in my child's path. Instead, we should pick up the shovel and say, okay, thanks God. Thanks for showing us this and this young child that still lives in my house where I have some control over. Show me how to fill in this valley. Show me how to remove this obstacle, not so my child doesn't suffer, but so they see you more clearer.
Yeah, and that they can see God in the suffering and see God in the path of where they're ultimately headed.
Absolutely.
The direction where they're ultimately headed.
Yeah, I there is that in us that wants our kids to have it not hard like we did. But what we forget is those struggles that we had made us who we are in a lot of ways.
Right. And they are going to struggle. And so what do you want the struggle to be? They may struggle with the struggle of pride and, I'm better than them or whatever. So they are going to struggle. So what are you removing?
Right. I remember one of my kids used to say he would get in trouble and then he would go, I'm a bad kid. And I used to tell him all the time, you're not a bad kid. You just messed up. And I was reading a book. I think it was the Shepherding Your Child's Heart book. And it said, when your child says they're bad, don't tell them they're not bad, because the reality is we're all bad. We all need a savior. And that is good for us to recognize that we mess up. And I remember one of my mentors telling me, you have to let your kids be a sinner, because if they're not, they won't need a savior. And it's important for us to let our kids be a sinner. And, this book said, next time your child says that, say, hey, sometimes you're a bad boy and I'm a bad mom. And that's why God knew we would do that. He knew we would mess up and he provided a way for us. So I think so many times we see these obstacles and think, oh, I'm a bad person, or, oh, my kid's gonna, we get frustrated. And I think that is God showing us something we can work on so that our children can see a better picture of God.
I have an example of in my life where I was raising a teenager, had raised 3 teenagers, but there was a situation where my son wanted to do some, I don't even remember the situation, but we were having kind of a head-to-head conversation. He wanted to go somewhere. I didn't think it was a good place, so he asked me the question, and I really feel like it was the Spirit leading this conversation, which I felt very blessed later, that because I hadn't pre-thought any of this when he came to me, when we were talking about whether he should go or not. He said, Mom, don't you trust me? And I said, I don't trust Satan. Yeah. All of a sudden, we are on the same team fighting the same enemy.
Oh, that's so good, Kelsey.
And it made it more clear for me. It made it more clear for him.
You're not against each other anymore.
No, we're not.
You have a common enemy.
Exactly. And that was clearing a path for both of us, realizing, okay, yeah, we have a common enemy, and God has given me a job to help you fight that common enemy. And so that's where we went with our conversation. And really, from the time that happened to any decision after that, we had great conversations about, okay, we're going to have to fight Satan in this situation. I think he's going to attack you in this area, and so we would have those real conversations about where Satan is going to attack you when he wanted to go somewhere, watch a movie or do something like that. We would talk about how, Satan's going to attack you, so how are we going to defend ourselves? How are we going to fight this battle? So
I love that idea about being on the same team. And we are on the same team, and the reality is God is on our team. And so we don't have to go fix all these things because God is going to work them out, probably not as quickly as we would like them to. I teach students, and I was in a conversation with a college student, a boy, the other day, and he was telling me a story, and I don't know his family. He's not from here, and I thought when he told the story, I thought, wow, you have a wise mom, is what I told him. But he said that I don't know what was going on in his life, but he had left home and he needed to come back to home. He had gotten into some trouble, and his parents told him, you can come back and you can live with us, and we're not going to charge you rent. We're not going to ask you to do a job. But he said that his mom said, but I have one request before you move home. She said, I want you to go for a walk with me every afternoon outside. And he said, he told me, kind of rolled his eyes and thought, whatever. And because he needed to get home. He was going through some depression as well as some other stuff. And so every afternoon, his mom would put on her tennis shoes and they would just go for a walk. And he said the first day they went for a walk, she said, now I go for a walk every day, and I'm just going to tell you what I do. She said, when I'm out walking, I just like looking out and finding crosses. It's just something I do. And he said he thought that was silly, but they would start walking, and his mom would point up to some branches in a tree and say, look, there's a cross. And then they would go a little further, and she would look and see some wires in the sky. Hey, look, there's a cross, or those clouds. And so he said his mom did this every day. And he said before long, he would kind of sarcastically go, there's a cross over there to the right, He would see them.
Yeah.
And his mom would go, oh, there is. That's good, And then he said, as they kept walking every afternoon, he said he started going, hey, Mom, there's one. Hey, Mom, there's a cross. And he said after a couple of days, he went, Mom, these are everywhere. And he said his mom looked at him and said, they are if you have eyes to see them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he got that lesson because he was telling me,
Right. Right.
And I thought, what a wise mom to not just tell him something, but to have the patience to just wait for him to discover, to let him think she was silly or goofy or something, and just know that she just needed to get him outside, out in the creation.
She was clearing the way.
And she was saying, God is everywhere. Mm-hmm. You just have to have eyes to see.
Thanks for listening and journeying with us on this side of the ceiling. See you next time.